So firstly, let's put in the area where the table is. So if we look at roughly where this little bottle or vase of flowers, you can see that it sort of sits on a table. And there's it's kind of like a white table, and then you've got the background, which is cloth as well. So I try to estimate where is that line where you want the bottle to sit on, and I put it roughly around here. Okay, so it's probably a third of the way through the page. Okay, go pretty light. I use the end of my pencil, as you can see here, to just put in a quick little line. Okay, and what we'll do is let's get in a few bits and pieces of the vase. Okay, so it's kind of just going up sunflowers as well. I tend to draw them in as these quick little circular shapes too, and then detail them a bit later. Okay, oval, and you can already indicate roughly which direction that they're facing. Like this one here, you've got it kind of facing upwards. This one's just facing towards the front. Okay, so I tend to just put them in as these little ovals, and the ovals indicate roughly where they are facing. And if you have them facing different directions, makes it a lot easier to just get some variation into what you're painting. So I'll have to draw a little bit darker for you guys. I think it's tricky to see here. And also just put in a few of these little petals coming off on the edges, on the sides. Now I don't try to draw them all in with a huge amount of accuracy. Just try to get in an indication of where the petals go out. Later, when we actually use going with the watercolors, this will change up a little bit. So you don't need to get it all in with too much detail. And Yvette saying hearing fine. Christine says YouTube is good now. Great. Yeah, we've lost about 80 or so people from the other stream, and this isn't. We've had a few technical things go not so to plan lately, especially in the group, in our big Facebook group. So that's life, I guess. Too light, can't see pencil. Let me just lower the brightness a touch. It's a little bit tricky to see. Maybe I can zoom in a touch. How's that? Does that look a bit better? That should hopefully help you. Okay. So the center part of the sunflower is what I try to indicate the most. The petals and stuff like that, I just get in a brief indication. Okay. And of course, this one here, as you can see, the petals kind of go upwards. And that's how you indicate the direction that they're facing. Okay, like that on here. And of course, the inner part, that darker sort of part of the flower facing upwards. Okay, just to remind me where to put it in afterwards. Here, of course, we had another one kind of coming up around here as well. So you can just add in a little indication of the petals. It's just for your reference, really. Okay. This one here, if I can get a few more of these ones just coming up towards the right hand side, like that. And then we've got the bottle, which is then we've got there's apples, a few apples and things like that here as well. I'm thinking I will just potentially skip over some of the detail with the other one, but I do want to try to put a few of these apples in. There's like a plate and stuff like that as well. ball shape like this. And here, that. Okay. Draw that in there. Usually start out with the roundness first, a round sort of shape, and then refine it as we go on. Your drawing is it's interesting. Emma, if you refresh your screen, Emma's saying that the stream doesn't exist. It's a black screen. Yeah, if you refresh your window, it should help. Yeah, it may not have reconnected. There's a few people saying that they can see. Can you? Okay. Yep. So try that. Yeah, I'll have to investigate, have a bit of a look later on and see what's actually happening. I'll do some tests for next time. Yeah, the program just updated itself. So there we go. We've got a little indication of this apple, and I'm going to get in the other two. There's one here, okay, next to the vase or the bottle jar. Then we've got another one right in front, kind of overlaps a bit like this. Okay. And still lifes are not something I paint so often. Normally when people think of painting, especially when they go to a class or something like that, they do think of still life or maybe like a portrait painting or something like that. But what I do find is that they can be helpful. Yeah, they can be fairly helpful. Like if you are wanting to get in some practice on shapes and forms. Okay. I don't want to spend all day drawing in all these little details though. So we want to focus on the flowers. There is this kind of cloth that comes off here and goes downwards. So again, indication of this cloth coming down the table like that. The table actually has a front part of it, like roughly here, just underneath the plate section, and then it's fairly dark underneath here. Okay, so you should have something that resembles this this little scene here. Okay, I've got the bottle. Another thing as well is just to put in maybe the water level. Okay, like in here in the bottle, rough indication of the water level. Some of these little stems as well coming through the water. Okay, just simplify these down. Yeah, put in a few little of these stems. That. Okay, coming through like that. Okay. Let's get the edges of this bottle in a bit better. Okay, good. So you can also rewind the video a little bit to where everything properly started if you missed out on the first part of it. But yeah, just having a look. Okay, a few more petals for this one up the top here, and again, I'm not trying to draw every single one of them in. I'm just putting in an indication. Okay, really just to mark out roughly the size of everything. Okay, there's an apple here. I'll just erase some of this line behind the apple. here as well. Okay. I really want to just get you guys to focus on the actual flowers themselves. So we will zoom out a bit so you can now see the general composition, the general plan that we've got here. Okay. And we're going to start with some colors. So let's get in. I'm going to pick up a little mop brush. Okay. And over here, I will mix up a tiny bit of this color. It's Hansa yellow. Okay, Hansa yellow, which is basically a really vibrant yellow. The way that I do these petals is that I push down a bit more during the center and then lift off at the end. Okay, and when you lift off at the end, it creates these like sharper edges, tapers the petal in a little bit more at the end. So as you can see, I start off mainly in the center and then work my way out. But I know, other people will do it, from the outside in, what have you. Not a huge difference, but make sure that you use a lot of water here. You want to use about 80 to 90% water in this section. You don't want to be using too much paint. You want it to be nice and light and transparent, especially for later on. This one's got quite a few little petals, so I'm just putting them in quite quickly, as you can see. I always start with the light bits first because with watercolors, you're not going to be able to get in a lot of that light afterwards. So you need to be able to preserve these light bits, get them in first. Any color that is close in tone to, the yellows, the white of the paper, just get those in first. Okay, there's, what have we got in here? There's a few more petals going upwards. Notice as well, I'm just trying to follow the direction of these petals so that they indicate where the flower's facing. Like this one, for example, you can see it's sort of the petals are going towards the right, to these ones to the left, and maybe upwards, these ones to the left. And so the flowers look a bit more varied, a little bit more interesting. So now I'll go into the middle as well of the flowers, and let's put in a bit of yellow in here as well. Maybe a bit of yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is just a kind of a darker yellow. And see how I sort of just paint the center of the flower in. And this, again, helps to guide the direction which way they're facing. So a bit more of this darker yellow. And also what I like to do is drop in extra paint into some of the petals. Okay, as you can see, a little bit of darker yellow paint into the petals, because actually they're not as bright as I've as we put them in already. They actually have a bit of darker yellowy bits. They're still yellow, but near the center of the flower, you get a bit more. You get a bit more darkness. Okay. Don't be afraid to also leave out a bit of that white on the paper as well. Okay. Now I will pick up a little bit of. This is just a bit of black, and I'm mixing that in with my yellow, because I want to create maybe an extra darkness in the center of these flowers. I don't want it to be too dark though, so I'm just being quite careful. And I'm doing it now because I want this to just blend into the flower nicely, so it just appears softer, not too harsh, and not too harsh and sharp. Okay, we're just getting in some loose shapes, and kind of keeping in mind the direction that you're making these the more spherical you make them, like this one here, the more it appears that sunflower is facing forwards. If you've got it kind of on the side like this, it looks like they're facing downwards, or like this, facing upwards, that kind of thing. So I think this is okay. We will go and just get in. I'm going to pick up, what have I got here? So I'll pick up a same round brush, little round brush, and I will put in a bit of green, a little bit of green for the leaves and stuff like that. So there are some bits and pieces of leaves here. I can just put in here, and get it to blend in nicely. This could be like a bit of a stem or something. Here. You notice some of it starts to go into the flowers. I'm not too worried about that. I just want to get in a little touch of green in here. Okay. Blend that in like that. Okay. And let's have a look. Maybe some of this stem we can put in as well. Just a bit of green for the stem. Mark out where it is. This is an interesting one because the water in here, the water level and what have you, it's not too much contrast between the jar and the background. Also, the light source is coming from that left hand side and above, so you're getting, it's almost like a bit of darkness underneath, but it's not as dark as yeah, I think even the background looks like a little bit lighter than the jar. So let's just give it a go. I'm gonna put in. Well, first we've got to decide to ourselves. Well, do we want to make this jar like a lighter or a little bit darker? I think probably it would be better to make it slightly darker, because the background is lighter. And then I'm cutting around all these flowers anyway, so I think that's going to create some enough contrast and variation. So I will just go ahead. Let's just put in a bit of, this is really just some grayish color, okay? Just a bit of grayish color that I've found on the palette, and you can use whatever color you've got. You just mix up your primaries or something like that. But I will just drop a bit of that in here. Okay, carry this down so that it looks like the flowers are actually sitting in something. Okay, cut around some of those stems. Okay, like that. The actual water that it's sitting in is a little darker. I'll have to go over and redo that afterwards, give it a second layer. Okay, but just put in a bit of gray there to give it an outline. Okay, look at this. We've got some of these apples as well. Why not just put in a bit of green? I'm going to put some green and just some yellow together. I don't have a very vibrant green on my palette at the moment, but we can mix up a lighter green like this. Okay, and put this in. There's a few different colors on these apples actually. There's like a kind of a more lighter greeny color here. Almost like a bit more yellowy in there. Tiny bit. Put in a bit of that here. Let's just get in the general shape of it first. That. Okay. That. Yeah. Yeah. Oops. A bit of grey with that, actually. A bit more green running through. Good. Let's put in some colors for this tablecloth as well. So you can see there's really just these little indications of these blue bits and pieces here. Narrator's asking, Darren, is that a sap green mixed with yellow? It's actually a dark green, so it's undersea green. It's like a granulating sort of green, and I've mixed it off with a tiny bit of yellow. So just have a play around with what you've got. The main things here is just looking at whether it's like a light green or a dark green. DM is asking, will the recording of this be available yet later? Yes, it will be. I'll put it up. Yeah, if anyone's on Facebook and if anyone's on Facebook or knows anyone on Facebook, just send them the link here. I did post in a few places, but I know like it doesn't come up. The links to YouTube don't really come up there, so I'll have to deal with Facebook afterwards and all the questions. Almost thinking to scrap Facebook next time, but no, I'll have to fix it up. Robin says cobalt teal and Hansa make a nice green apple. Yeah, that's a good idea actually. Yeah. So go ahead. What am I doing? I'm just getting some very light bits of blue and trying to indicate just some of this tablecloth. Okay, not anything complicated or what have you. And another thing you can do is, wet and wet work. You can pick up a bit of darker paint and just drop it in here to the apple to indicate some details in it, just some shadow. Okay, these could be anything really. I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to spend all day working on the apples, but it's more sort of the sunflowers. But as you can see, just dropping in a bit of darker paint here kind of indicates some of the shadows already. All right. As long as you've got indications of light and dark, you should be fine. We'll go in afterwards, maybe add in a tiny bit of extra detail on them, but I really don't want to spend all day doing this. There we go. Good. I've got a bit of this blue in here, like that. Here. Looking around and seeing what else could we potentially put in here. I mean, the tablecloth and all that kind of stuff. There is a little bit of darkness down there, but I want to connect it up with the shadows and stuff in the background. So let's go ahead and have a play around with that. So firstly, I will pick up a mop brush. This is just a smaller mop brush that I've got here, and I'm going to has this part dried? No, it hasn't dried yet, so we'll have to kind of wait. We'll work on the sunflowers and the shadows and stuff up the top, the background. I'm going to pick out some purplish kind of paint, because it's just a nice complementary to use. You can also use other neutral colors like brown or gray and stuff like that mixed in with it. I tend to make my backgrounds pretty varied. Okay, where we get the light source coming in from the left, so there might be a sense of light over here, so something to experiment around as well. Now this is what I do. I'll start off near the petals, and again using smaller brushes. Even I use this one here, which is like a little flat edged sort of brush like this. Okay, it's a little what you call it, flat brush, and if you can see, it just cuts around very, very nicely. A lot of the detail and a lot of the indication of the flowers and the the petals and stuff actually come from this cutting around work. Okay, and it's not perfect either, as you can see. I'm just doing it quickly, but you get the idea. This is like a negative painting type of technique where you're just cutting around and exposing a few petals here and there. You'd be surprised how little you need to sort of draw out for it to start looking like a flower. And don't be afraid to leave some of the white of the paper as well. Okay. I never paint in everything. I always leave out a bit of white. And it just creates like little sparkles of interest here and there. Okay. So I'm using these like two brushes. I use one for just the cutting around the petals, and the other one you can also just use something like a little mop brush like this and get away with it as well. Okay, like that. You know, just cutting around, trying to just use as few brush strokes as I can as well. Okay, it's already starting to come together. So you might think to yourself, hey, a bit more vibrancy up here, or maybe I could use some brown up here. Okay, let's put in a bit of brown. It's a neutral sort of color. Yeah, this brown is a little bit warmer though. But we can put in a bit of that just to change things up. Try not to use too many colors in your backgrounds. I try to use only maybe 2 or 3 colors, if any. Okay, oops, some of it sort of leaked over. Okay, look at that. Just bring it down, and suddenly you notice things are coming out of the woodwork. As I'm moving downwards here, I'm just trying to go lighter. Another thing to keep in mind is these apples, right? These apples need to be cut around a touch like this. So I'm just maybe painting in a little bit more of a darkness around them, like that. Just to cut around those shapes. Yeah, and I'll get that in quickly. There we go. Okay. That left hand side, let's cut around these petals a bit like this as well. See? There we are. Bit of extra color to the left. This is just a bit of purple, and I do have whatever's just left over on the palette here, which is just a mixture of darker grays. Okay, bringing this down. Okay, thinking to myself, how dark do I want to make this further down? I'll just cut around this vase first, like that. Keeping in mind the vase is actually darker, we'll have to go into it a bit later. Or we can make it sort of stick out, but I think a shadow on it would look nicer. Okay, I'm just dulling things down here, making it a bit darker off in the background, so that there's some contrast for the apples as well. See, just cutting around them, but not too dark, just enough to draw out the roundness of them. Okay, there we are. Yeah. Okay, now we're moving on to this like table here. You notice the table is pretty much, it's just like pretty light. So you can either leave it white or just pick up a bit of this stuff, which is what is it? It's just a bit of this milky white color that I've got. It's buff titanium. That's what it is. Just drop in a bit of this here. Okay, Actually, in here it's darker. I'm always looking at what color, what tone things are, and trying to make sure that I've got the right tone in there, whether it's light or dark. I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind. Okay, there we go. There's a bit of darkness actually around there through the center. But as you move downwards, it's just a lot darker down this side of the table further down. So I will pick up more, more of this grey colour. We'll just make it grey. Carry that downwards. Okay. Try to use a few brush strokes for this. Let's not get too bogged down. Okay. There you go. Bit of that there, bit of that here. Okay, bit of darkness. Not only that, but you do get some dark bits and pieces on this cloth as well here. So I'll just try to join that up a touch. You can create like, it's almost like these little folds and stuff in the fabric too, like that. Join, and that sort of creates a join with this part of the table. Okay, but there's still, there's still like whites in there, as you can see, little bits of whites, and you can also see around the apple and stuff like that. And there's like a shadow, bit of a shadow underneath the apples, like here. So you can, oops, that should be darker here, actually, that apple on the right hand side. So just indicating a bit of the form of the apple as well there. This one as well. See, it's a little bit messy at the bottom before, but we can clean it up and bring some of that shape back. Okay. There are shadows on the plate cast by the flowers, the vase. So I just put in a bit of that, little bit of that grey here. Okay, like this. I'm going to work a bit on the vase now and put in some color in there to get it a little darker in there. Let's go and use some darker paint, just a bit of grey. Okay. Try to blend that a bit into the background as well, like that. Cool. So after you've done all this, I think just give it a quick dry. We'll put in a few more details and highlights and bits at the end. But the main thing I wanted to show you was just these the sunflowers, and making sure that you've got the softness of all the petals in there, and using this cutting around technique as well is something that I use really often. You see here as well, I can go back into it and using this small round brush bring out little details of the petals, kind of just draw in with a light bit of color, some indications of where the petals like come out. Okay, especially when it's still sort of wet, you can like soften some of these edges like that. Pick up a bit of water, dry off that brush, and just like soften off that edge, and you get this nicer kind of blending effect in with the background. I don't want to do it to all the areas, but this is a technique I've seen a lot of floral artists do. creates like these nice little soft impressions, so that you've got, of course, some sharper edges and some softer edges as well. Okay. So I'm going to give this a little dry, and then we'll get back to it. Oh, I think you should be able to hear okay now, Yvette. Um, Look, I've been having so many issues today with the stream, and it's got nothing to do with my internet connection. It's something to do, I think, with the software that I'm using. It's been updated or what have you. I was really excited to do this one today, and I'm still having some fun, but it's been frustrating, obviously, trying to click in and out of this software. It just disconnects every now and then, and so has caused some issues, obviously. So we will continue on with this, and hopefully, if everything holds fine, we will continue on and do the second scene. Okay, and I'll try to make these. I think I'll make these quicker as well. And I wanted to spend a bit more time, but I think my mind is just preoccupied trying to look at this screen and making sure that it's working half the time. So it's a bit distracting. Thank you all for your patience. So we will go and do some final bits and pieces of these flowers. This is certainly not I think I could do a lot better with these flowers. Thank you, Anne. But I think you guys get the idea, the general idea that I've gone through in terms of cutting around cutting around the flowers using this negative painting technique. Here around the vase as well, I think we can darken off a little bit, just bring out some of the details of the vase, because obviously the flowers are casting a slight shadow underneath. So making sure that we've got in some of those details is really important. Just making sure it's darker as well. So I'm going to pick out a little bit of this grayish color, and I will just darken off underneath a touch like this. Okay. A little bit of gray there, so that the vase just comes forwards a bit more. The stems of these sunflowers as well, I think what I'll do is just make them a bit more wet and wet sort of effect. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So if we go all the way down further like this, right, just creating a bit of darkness in the bottom here. What we can then do is pick up extra paint. Okay, bit of extra green. Okay, just drop that in here like this, and help that to, because the area around it is still pretty wet, we can just drop in a bit of that green and it will move along. Okay, create an impression of some of those bits and pieces, stems in there. A few little dark bits as well here at the base. I thought some darkness here. Here we've got a bit of darkness also on the apple, the edges of the apple here, underneath as well, like here, there. Really just your darkest bits of the painting there. Maybe a bit of shadow underneath that apple there. Okay, and this is how you bring out some sense of form as well. Maybe there. Okay, picking out bits and pieces, something like that. That there. Okay. What else can we do? Maybe a touch of shadow running to the right hand side for some of these apples, like this, there, these, whatever you like, just casting a bit of that shadow, like that. A little bit of dry brush in the background, like here, for just the edge of the table. Separating that out a touch. A bit more of that cloth. Okay. I'm actually quite tempted to change this up a bit, maybe make the vase, the background dark around the vase, but look, I think we will just leave it as is. Okay. Take off that paper, tape around the edges. Let's have a quick look. I think it looks all right for a little sketch, and we had some practice, I suppose, using these different techniques, and just goes to show not everything works out 100% the way you want it to. But the main thing, of course, is I think I like the granulation up in the edges, this kind of wet and wet effect. Normally you can, if you minus out the apples and stuff like that, just focus on the vase, you can get something like that in very, very quickly.